this was 15 years ago, nothing of doing that, of cracking a joke about this obviously unstable individual. I thought it was totally fine and normal to have that attitude. Now, of course, there has been an erasure of this attitude in the culture because of the visibility of transgenders. And for me, it really hit home when I was watching a talk show on CNN and Thomas James Gable was on. Thomas was the lead singer, the lead singer of one of my favorite bands, Against Me, which is kind of a hard pop punk band that should have been bigger than it was, a kind of a more rock and roll Green Day kind of, I guess. And Thomas James Gable was, I thought, quite good looking in a very masculine rock and roll way. And I was not only attracted to him as a performer, but also as a man. And I hadn't listened to the new record yet, Transgender Dysphoria Blues, but I had somewhat paid attention to the fact that he was about to transgender or already was in the process. And I saw him on this talk show as Laura Jane Grace, with long hair and makeup, and she was going through hormone replacement therapy, and it was a moment, a revelation. He described the pain and the fear of being trapped in a body that is the wrong gender. It was the moment that I got it, and it was because he was visible and articulate, and I felt that the Bruce Jenner interview was a confirmation as well. And as a man of a certain demo, I was really moved and thought, whoa, you're late to the party, Brett. But I guess what I'm asking you, first of all, did you watch the Jenner interview, and do you think it is the game changer that so many people in the mainstream seem to think it was? Because there was a lot of noise in social media from transgender people that wish it had been anybody but Bruce Jenner, that this rich, white, privileged Republican was not the face for the transgender community, that he is not representative by any means. But isn't that why it was so necessary in a way? I don't know. I mean, isn't that this can happen to anybody?
Yes, it can happen to anybody. Anybody is trapped in their body. You know, I grew up middle class, spent the summers by the lake, renting a cottage beside one other family. And there was one other friend I had for, I'd say, 7 summers. I spent the summer with the same friend. Her name was Susan Allen. And since we were 7, she told me, I am a guy. Since she was 7, she's like, watch how hard I can hit you. And she'd punch me in the stomach and wind me. She's like, I was watching this friend of mine who had the same body build as me and the same sort of life I did transform herself into a man in a time. This is like, you know, late 70s, early, no, it was 70s and then into the 80s. And what she had to go through to become Sean. You know, at 14, she told her mother she was a lesbian. She was kicked out at 16. You know, she didn't really get how to go about this. But at 18, she came over to my house and lifted her shirt and said, look, my breasts are gone. It was, you know, to me, it was a natural progression because I had watched her grow up and watched him become himself. Unfortunately, he died. But he got to realize his dream, which was he wanted to marry a woman and live in the suburbs and wear Lacoste t-shirts and have a child. And she had a child. So I guess for me, this whole new revelation of trans community, it doesn't seem so unrealistic to me or strange because this one person I spent all my summers with, that was the only person I spent every summer with, was transitioning before my eyes from 7 to 18.
So did you watch the Bruce Jenner interview at all?
I saw part 1 on a plane.
And what was your reaction?
I haven't, you know, I was in Australia when it was on and I watched it on a plane for a bit. So I haven't really had a chance to dig deep into what his feelings are and what he's gone through. So I haven't really heard it from his mouth. Do you find it strange that there was that kind of dissent in social media from transgender community saying he should not be representative? What do you think of that kind of reaction? That's a really good, dangerous, interesting point. You know, it's like, can he continue being a Republican? You know, well, maybe he's been a Republican this whole when you
look
time,
at the subsets of transgender,
it's
aren't there like
new.
Hundreds of different kind of combinations? Yeah, there's got to be. There's got to be one of them. I think this is the point of our conversation today, that there's all kinds of people. Yes. And you talked about a progression in attitudes. I see it as exponentially moving in every direction. Yeah. So it's like there's more extreme left and more extreme right and more tolerance and less tolerance. Yes. And everybody's
completely outspoken in 2 minutes, because
context. We talk about context, lack of context.
Yeah, it's just like just spouting it out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and why isn't he allowed to be who he needs to be? I just think, and here's where the hippie in me comes in. It's like people need to be who they need to be.
Yeah.
Let them be. And maybe this is getting a little more superficial. So if you don't want to discuss this, but I just find it really interesting that Bruce Jenner, the community that he was hanging out with and the women he was hanging out with, he must have gotten so many incredible tips on how to be externally a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's why it was so fascinating for him, or, because to me, fake breasts are fake breasts. It's on a man or a woman. It's the same.
Right.
It's just as sexy or just as disgusting, however you see it. It's like once you've put it on, it doesn't matter.
Right.
When people are like, that dude has breasts, or they say like, look at that chick, she's got awesome breasts, whatever. It's like, it's the same thing.
Yeah, there's that. There's also the narrative, the kind of origin story of this is that, Kris Jenner kind of saved Bruce. He had no money. He was broke. She kind of took him in and kind of resurrected him again in terms of his career, and was a very strong supporter of him at a time when, I think she gets a bad rap a lot, and I understand because of the whole dynamic can be a turnoff to a lot of people. But I don't know, that story about helping Bruce is, I don't know, it touched me.
I guess I haven't seen. Is that part of the?
Yeah, it's part of the whole package.
I wish I would have seen that. But also I think, didn't Kanye West? He was very supportive, wasn't he? Of course. And I thought that was really important
for Kanye to be
outspoken about it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's always outspoken.
He is always outspoken.
He wants to be the president.
And we've talked about that. Kanye's outspokenness really does get a hugely bad rap in the white mainstream. But if you read the black music press, they don't even touch it. They don't even go there at all.
He got down.
People making fun of Madonna lately, the dreaded double standard of being a woman, ageism. Watching AC/DC at the Grammys this year, well, they were old. Van Halen reuniting at the Billboard Music Awards, they were old. Even Simple Minds playing Don't You Forget About Me at the Billboard Music Awards looked a lot heavier and older than they did in their heyday. I don't mention this anywhere in the press. When you, Peaches, played with the Strokes for a new musical press showcase, the headline of a review read, "Grandma, you're scaring the kids."
Yeah, I would like to mention I was 33 at the time.
Yeah, we're good.
Which, and you rightly interpreted
as
bitch, you're old. Get off the stage and let the cute boys play the rock and roll. And one of your colleagues has said, it is fucking awful that women in the music industry have to say young and sexy or whatever. And you have talked about what it's like to age in public as a female pop star. And maybe, some women figure it out, like maybe Kate Bush or maybe Annie Lennox. And some women figure it out in other ways. I was thinking about Courtney Love, who has some pretty good plastic surgery. She was in the Talking Head segments in that new Kurt Cobain documentary called Montage of Heck that Brett Morgan directed. But Madonna, I'm not sure the problem is Madonna's actual aging as much as it is her tendency to hold on to a certain age level where it kind of no longer wears well. The divide is apparent.
But wait, what about the guitars from AC/DC?
Yeah.
Is he still wearing his schoolboy costume?
I don't think he was in the Grammys.
Mm-hmm.
Where was he?
I don't know, but he wears it all the time.
Well, is that a sexual thing? Or is it just shows that there's still like the little, bad boy who doesn't want to grow up?
I guess so.
Well, that might be just the notion of rock and roll in general. I just don't ever want to grow up in a way.
Right.
But again, seem to get it, of course, more. But, if Madonna dressed her age, reinvented her catalog, and gave concerts where she stopped concentrating on dancing and just figured out new meanings and new
I
interpretations to her catalog, it
I'm
would work for her, and
listening
this unrelenting humiliation would go away. But she hasn't really said anything.
Yeah.
She just thinks that she is supposedly a lot funnier than people think she is. And she went on when the record came out this year, she did a number of stints on late night where she tried to be like a comedian. But Banana's never been funny. She's not funny. She's grim and kind of cold. And it reminds me of like what Michael Jackson said. Michael Jackson said, the difference between Madonna's music and my music is that Madonna never made anybody cry. And that there is this feeling about her of kind of being.
So this is Bret Easton Ellis. He's a writer.
So
this
controlling.
Is Bret Easton Ellis. He's a writer. American Psycho, Less Than Zero, Rules of Attraction.
Rock in the theatricality of
He's
Madonna
interviewing
not acquiescing to
Peaches.
this.
So you think that she sees herself
That's Peaches
as rolling with the punches in a way like, this is just me and that's how I'll always be.
I mean, personally, what do you think? I mean, do you think it wears well on her? I mean, have you seen?
I really don't think it wears well, but I don't think that Van Halen is wearing well either.
No.
But I do want to continue to make music into my 90s. So I don't know, there has to be a way to continue. And there is definitely, as we all get older in this pop culture, and that we're living longer, that we're going to want to perpetuate this.
Yeah.
So what is the way to do it? Because I also, I have a lot of theatricalities in my live show, a lot of physicalities. And to go back to your opening speech, I see myself as a complete superhero on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And I revel in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the older I get and continue that, I hope that people see it as even more of a superhero power.
Yeah.
But maybe some people will just be like, that's sad. But then you look at someone like Iggy Pop, and I don't think that's sad.
No, not at all. Well, like I said, I look at someone like Kate Bush, who did a run of shows just in.
I went twice.
That are kind of amazing, and
she did find a way.
Yeah, to kind of like land. But I looked all over to try and find the Jesus Christ Superstar concert you did, retitled Peaches Christ Superstar. There's a little bit here and there, but I would have loved to hear you sing Everything's All Right or I Don't Know How to Love Him. And fantasizing about this, I wondered, would you ever record an album of standards like that, or write ballads or pop songs like that for record? I know you wrote folk music before Peaches. You have a great voice, and while listening to your records, I kept thinking, does she ever want to do like a Dancing on My Own or a Born This Way or a Beautiful Stranger or whatever? I mean,
I have a new song coming up on this album.
Rub. The album's called Rub, right?
And I think it's like my Dancing on My Own. It's called Dumb Fuck. And I think that in the last album, Lose You was also.
I totally agree.
My,
awesome
secret
name.
Guilty pleasure,
Dumb
I am
Fuck.
like a karaoke addict.
Mm-hmm.
I even have a karaoke show where I sing Wuthering Heights and, Bonnie Tyler. And I've done like major bang, bang, bang DJ sets where at the end I'm always singing Private Dancer to a piano, just to kind of say like, hey, guess what else I can do?
Right.
When I started, I made sure that I didn't do that. I made sure that I didn't use my voice in that way because I didn't want to be seen as a singer, a female singer. I had something to say and I wanted to be the producer and I wanted to, so that was probably the only way I was calculated in being, more like, how can I be more like Chrissy Hynde, where it's just like her voice is cool and it's not, than someone like Barbra Streisand, who I grew up on.
Right. Yeah, that and Neil Diamond and a lot of things that your parents were listening to at the time.
Yeah.
I heard all the records, but I forgot that you had done the Alanis Morissette parody of My Humps called My Dumps. It's gorgeous. It sounds gorgeous.
Actually, I didn't sing the My Dumps, the slow one. That's not me. That's Inara George. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, that's amazing because that needed to be done in 24 hours.
Why does it say your name on it?
It's my version.
Okay.
But it had to be done in 24 hours because Alanis Morissette had put out that one, and I had done I had done a parody of My Humps, which was fine, and made a video. And then Alanis Morissette did the slow version. So I wanted to be the first person to do a parody of a parody. But I know I only had 24 hours. So I had Greg Kirsten. I asked him if he could play it on piano. And he was on tour with Bird and the Bee with Inara George. So they're like, so I was like, could you guys just do this? And I have the video ready. And so, but I have seen that live. That version.
It's beautiful. Well, being a fellow Canadian, what do you think of Alanis Morissette?
Yes.
Hey, don't you think Jagged Little Pill is kind of like a perfect pop record?
I
would love to hear what you have to say.
I mean, at the time, I loved it, and I don't think it's great now. I think it's fun to listen to. What I like most about Alanis Morissette, I think she's a really good actor. I really liked her on Weeds.
I wasn't watching it then.
Love Alanis Morissette.
She looks a lot like my first girlfriend.
I had a girlfriend too. Same. That looks like her.
So that's resonant.
I wonder if it's the same
we talk about movies on this podcast, and I wanted to ask you about one of my favorite films, Phantom of the Paradise, the Brian De Palma rock horror movie from 1974. And then I have talked about on the Ty West episode of this podcast and how it kind of blew me away when I saw it at 10. And has remained one of my favorite movies ever since. How do we relay what's so special to get people who haven't seen it to watch this movie? And what was it for you when you saw that flipped a switch?
It changed everything. I think that everything I do is based on that movie. I really do. It's funny because I got a pair of grills and then I just couldn't stop going, Phoenix. First of all, it's dirty. You cannot make that movie now. The way they talk about drugs is amazing. I just showed my 28-year-old roommate that movie for the first time this weekend because on my personal Facebook page I have the Phantom getting with all the analog gear behind him, and he was blown away too because I was nervous. I'm like, God, is this just going to be dated for a 28-year-old? And he was just like, what? How do they make movies like this? I don't understand.
My 28-year-old boyfriend, I showed it to him this year too, felt the exact same way. He totally responded to it and said, you mean that came out in the theater? That was like a big, I said that was one of 20th Century Fox's, I think, movies of the fall. And I actually remember, and I've talked about this on the podcast, and it kind of shows the differences of where we are now, is that I walked alone at 10 to a theater, paid money by myself. No one was with me. No one watched. And bought something at the concession stand, walked into the theater at 10 and sat there and had my mind blown. And I liked it. I thought the movie was really cool. I felt adult kind of watching it at that age. I cannot imagine that happening now. I cannot imagine that scenario happening now. I can imagine kids responding to Frozen.
I had a girlfriend.
I don't know if they would respond to it.
Her name was AJ.
Kind of sexy.
She looked just like Alanis Morissette.
I remember that scene where there was like, they had audition and all the women were sitting around, and I felt funny in my pants. And I was also 10. And I went there actually with my friend Susan that I was telling you about. And we also, in the summer just walked, let us in. It was a double bill with Rocky Horror Picture Show before it was a cult movie.
Right, because Rocky Horror Picture Show came out that year, 75, and did not become a cult movie for many years after. But it's just the notion that we were young and we could go see movies like that, and they didn't trigger something in us. We didn't have to find a safe space.
Safe space.
Where's my safe space?
No, we were open to it. I had the same feeling when I saw Tommy.
Oh yeah,
Tommy,
it's time to dab.
Russell.
That same
Let's
moment,
do it.
that same year.
The Gypsy Acid Queen scene.
Unforgettable.
Yeah. So that's exactly. See, I went to theater school. I wanted to be a theater director and make a cool musical. So am I going to
talk to you about something?
And I decided that it's easier. This was not calculated at all, but in the end, I was like, I don't want to work with actors. I could be my own writer and producer, director, performer, and became a musician. And turns out,
Okay, so Emma, let me just make sure I have my volume up. Okay, so yay. And There's a really nasty guy in my YouTube one. Gosh, go get him. His name is Bestman31. He's calling you. Invite me. I want my crying my dick. These are the ones that have been held for review, the comments. Touch your boobs. I can't. Crying my dick. What a pathetic excuse for a human being. I would never. Not you. Anyways, I'm just gonna pretend that you're not here. That's my greatest revenge is the way I react. So there you go. You got your reaction, and I'm out. So friends of mine in Facebook, I am also live in YouTube. And I want to say if you look for Melissa Wallace at gmail.com, that'll get you there. So come on and abuse this guy. No, not abuse, but you know, he's so gross. It's really nasty. I don't understand why men want to talk about their dicks. I don't get it. Like, I just don't. I don't get it at all. It's not exciting to me. Best man 31 on my YouTube. Yeah. Let's see here. All right. So anyways, I got a little troll, but that's okay. You know, it's not going to ruin my day, that's for sure. So, okay, here's the deal, Emma. I got like tagged in a comment, and it's a good friend of mine, and it was about how cannabis can cause psychosis. Right? Mic drop. Boom. So this is like someone I really care about, you know. It's just kind of I don't think that smoking is my issue. I really don't. I don't know that it's like super helpful, but we do have a cannabinoid system in our body, you know. We do. And I know, right, Emma? It sucks. It's like, you can't find me? Okay, let me figure out what I got going on here. Maybe is it Melissa Wallace? Leave out the Raider? Let me check. Passwords, payment methods, addresses, and more. Open guest window. Manage. Yeah, so anyways, I'm kind of bummed out. I mean, this is like somebody that's a massage therapist who's like taking care of my kids when I have a nervous breakdown. She and my couple other really good friends took care of my kids when I was super sick. But she was always way more into it than I was back in the day. I think now I'm into it way more than she is. It's like flip-flopped. But, you know, it just sucks. I mean, it just kind of sucks. So all this time I have been quiet. I mean, for many years, I had a very private account. I was a teacher. I was a mother. as a girlfriend, I was very protective to the people in my life, you know? And I think this is the first like knock that kind of was just like, oh, you know, because I love her. I can't find you. Sorry. Yeah, I think she sent the article to me, or she tagged my name in the article. Was it a Bud and Tweezers saying that this can cause psychosis or something? I read that one too. Here's the deal. Honestly, so I've been open, completely open, and I'm done hiding. I am. I'm totally fucking over it. Like, I'm not hiding anymore. This is what I do. I don't smoke by myself. I go online and I smoke with my friends, or I smoke by myself in my room with my computer, however you want to look at it. I don't like smoking alone. So I do like to get on channels and fuck around. It's just fun, you know? And it's also really, really, really fun to just be on computers when you're high. And when you're in the middle of a psychosis, you don't even need to take drugs to get high. You know, if you notice me, I don't take drugs. I'm naturally a badass. I don't have to take drugs. Ha. I do have them. And the people that I care about know that I'm taking them. And, uh, I mean, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, folks. But I do have a doctor. I have quite a few, and I don't we had a good talk, and he was like, just stay away from sativa. So I don't have any sativa. I didn't buy any more. I like it. I like sativa, but I decided that I'd listen to my doctor, right? Because I'm not my own best doctor. I already tried that and it didn't work. So, you know, he won't give me a card, but he knows. I mean, it's just, if, yeah, it's hard though when you have a good friend that doesn't support you. And like, out of how many articles that you can tag me in, out of how many of them, like, I'll get over it in a few. But it just kind of hurt my feelings, you know. But here's the thing, I'm doing what's right for me right now. And if it doesn't work, I'll just pick myself back up. Good at that. I do it a lot. And the thing that I love about her so much is that she's trying to love me the best way she knows how, you know. I do. I am a believer that everybody's doing the best they can. You know, that's part of my therapy in dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT. A lot of that is like just knowing that everyone's doing the best they can, even when it doesn't feel good or it hurts your feelings or you offend somebody. It's still somebody just doing the best they can, you know? Oh gosh, I just thought of the turd that's in my YouTube room. He's a little turd. Let's see if he's still. Oh, he's still talking to himself. Oh god, pathetic. There's like this rapey, nasty guy in my YouTube. How do I get? Okay, I'm here. I'm sorry. I know I'm all over the place. Let's get that. There we go. And I will send this over to Emma. And this guy. You know what is cracking me up? That the title of this show is that's what Middle Eastern guys do, or that's what people do over in the Middle East or Africa too. Oh, goofy. Sorry, guys. But yeah, they do that when they get offended. They go, I think it's the funniest thing. I did fuck it up though. I didn't do a capital H. The first one is usually a capital H. Emma knows what I'm talking about. It's super funny, I think. So, yeah. Okay, I've got a dab. I'm sitting here holding on to it. It's going to get stuck on me. Come on, sister. We can do this. We could do this. I don't know how to tell my computer how to play music for me. Siri, but my phone's not working. It's not working. And I don't know where it is. It like rang at like 4 a.m. or something. And I think I shut it off. Okay. Shit. Damn it. I just touched my bathrobe on my banger. See that? Oh, motherfucker. That sucks. And guess what's going on today? The fire department is coming in to make sure that everything's safe. It's got my bathrobe melted on it. It's not burning off. I have another banger, a backup banger. See, look. Oh. You can't see it. Oh, I can. I'm going to leave it alone, I think, and just use the other one. Because this is like completely synthetic. I don't want to. It's my super soft up here. See how nice it is? And then down there, it's all burnt. Put your dick in the So you're gonna take a nap? That sounds like a really good idea. Have a good nap. I might do the same thing. I shall see you soon. Sweet dreams. Thanks for the support. Aw, that was my Emma.
A theater asked me 5 years ago to do a production in Berlin, and I didn't know what to do. And then I realized, oh yeah, I know how to direct, and I wanted to make a cool musical. Why don't I just reconfigure my albums? And that's how I came to do Peaches Does Herself, and it was a stage production and then became a movie. And when I watched that, I just cannot believe all the influence of Phantom of the Paradise and, of course, Rocky Horror Picture Show, especially the ending, very Phantom of the Paradise, kind of like, okay, we've done this and this, and now we just need to go gory. Yeah.
Well, also the songs are good. The soundtrack's really good.
Of Phantom of the Paradise. Yeah, well, most of it is good.
Well, a lot of it's a pastiche.
Yeah, but it's true. I even liked it better when I
did too.
This weekend. I was like, oh yeah, and he's like, God, they sound so familiar. I'm like, yeah, he wrote a bunch of Carpenter songs, and he's like, oh yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Right.
It's just I wish that Jessica Harper didn't do that chicken dance.
Yeah, you mean at her audition?
Yeah, that audition. She does this chicken dance. It's like.
I know.
But getting his head stuck in a record press, and then also the history of music and how, when music was a big production, and how the Phantom gets his voice back, and Paul Williams at the big mixing decks, like filters and all that romanticizing music too.
Just deliriously 70s in so many ways. I mean, it's a great movie. You described yourself in the past as quote unquote so Canadian, and you've talked about Canadian politeness. What is the Canadian spirit? What does that mean when you say things like that you're so Canadian?
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Saying that a lot. Australians do it too.
Mm-hmm.
There's something really inherently polite in the same way that Australians, as crazy as you go, whoever you are, there's something where you still have to be sorry or something. I don't know.
Right.
I also feel like it's a grounding. I feel grounded. I'm like, look, I'm Canadian. What are you going to do? Like, I'm not trying to be anything else other than myself. And I'm not from LA. I'm not from, I don't know,
Right.
somewhere exotic.
Right. I have met Canadians where I feel that it is almost mask-like, that the politeness is covering something else, a much more wild, crazy, internal thing going on. And that there is this kind of reserve and politeness. And I dated a Canadian. I dated a Canadian for a year. I dated a Canadian. That's the name of the song. But my boyfriend was Canadian, and I mean, a real Canadian. And, we went out for about a year, and I couldn't get over how passive aggressive I felt that he was.
It's true. The passive aggressiveness.
Very nice guy, I
but
will
it's
say.
True. Yeah. And I'm sure, even saying this, I'm like, oh, poor Canadians are going to hate that I say this. But even though Toronto is a huge metropolis, it's like the big city of Canada. I feel like sometimes when I go back, people are like, oh, so you moved from Toronto, huh? How you like it there in LA, or how you like it there? And it's kind of like, you left us.
Right.
Why'd you leave us? What's wrong with us?
Look, I've come up against it a lot. When I was working briefly with David Cronenberg, who's a very nice man, very polite, but his imagination is insane.
Incredible.
It's so out there. And even with a comedian like Norm Macdonald, who seems like an affable guy, but then when I said something about, I think I said that Alice Munro was overrated after she won the Nobel Prize for Literature, Norm just went after me on social media, looking for a fight. And it was like, this is the Canadian spirit, I think. I don't know. I mean, it just in those examples that I've had, there was always
or he just really likes Alice Munro.
Which is completely fair. As the theme of this podcast has been inclusion.
Inclusion.
Everybody,
you know what?
No matter, be who you are. Say what you want.
I know it sounds so hippie, but it's just, why is it so hard to be inclusive? I always think of John Waters and his incredible line. Why do they call it coming out? Everybody should just come in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I do want to talk about what else is in the Teachers of Peaches. Holger Talinsky,
yes.
Who did this book. Now, it was originally just going to be just all in one tour, right?
Not even. He was just like, hey, I'm a photographer. He's quite young. He was also like a skater kid and, just looking to hang around. And he was just like, can I come film a show? Your shows look pretty cool. And then he turned out to be just a really nice person and take great pictures and be very helpful, but also learn how to be out of the way. And he didn't make it about himself.
Right.
He charmed us in a very honest way. And I say us because it was, more than just me, my life, my people, my band, my world. And he just said, if you're ever doing anything like sick in bed all day, or you're smoking a joint, or you're hanging out with your family, or you're singing karaoke, or call me. I want to be there.
And how long did he end up sticking around in terms of photographing you? And what is the time span of the book? It
6 years.
So it begins with the I Feel Cream tour?
I Feel Cream tour. And then I took a break from making albums because I'd been doing the make an album for a year and tour it for 2 years, on and on and on. And then it turned out to be that's when I did Peaches Christ Superstar, the one woman show, originally with Chili Gonzalez on piano.
Right.
And then
Superstar.
Peaches Does Herself, and
fabulous.
where I was asked to sing the lead role as the male lead role as the first Italian opera
in
ever. In Italian with 6 other opera singers. Yes. So I had to study that for 6 months. I didn't do anything, just learning the difference between and in Italian, which I still don't know if I said any of those vowels correctly. And I don't read music, so I had an incredible teacher who taught me every song from the last line to the first line.
And why do you work that way?
Because to me, it was so foreign anyway, that when I learned the last line, the melody, if I learned the line before, then at least I could sing the line after and feel a sense of accomplishment. Right. I thought that was such a cool way. So when you learn the first line, then you can sing the whole song. Also, I produced this girl band from Taiwan called Go Chic and started a whole new. I got asked to DJ a lot, which every time I DJ, people said, "Why aren't you singing?" So I ended up doing a whole new show, which was DJing and singing with two dancers, and traveled around the world with that. And there's just a lot went on.
And why did you decide to put this book together?
Well, he wanted to put the book together. He made a dummy book for me maybe like 4 years ago. And then there was a lot of things that I didn't feel were representing me. We spent probably a year editing, putting pictures on my floor in my house and deciding like, this is a good picture technically, in his opinion. And to me, what makes me feel or what I think represents me. And we had to come to an agreement of what is going to represent me and be a good photographic story. Do you like it?
I do like
You
it
like
a lot.
it? You
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it?
No, and my boyfriend liked it too, and he's a big fan as well, and he's a musician as well. So, how do you make money in the music business? How do you make money in the music?
Borscht Belt. That's it. Just keep touring. It's a Borscht Belt.
That seems to be the answer. A lot of
Or-
musicians who
yeah.
come on the show go.
But you know, that's always been my thing, to just keep touring because I never really sell a lot of albums. You know, the people who love my albums, they love them. But now, you know, people don't even ever buy albums because they don't have to. But they have to come see me live. But you know what? No, I think I'll just brand myself. I'll just keep branding. Got to say it, you believe it. Got to say it, you believe it. Got to say it, got to say it, say it, say it, say it. Why don't you talk to me?
Love you back, Dave. Excuse me. All right. Well, that was fab. Well,
I know you'll never go. Why don't you talk to me? Why don't you talk to me? Why don't you talk to me? Come say it to my face so we can leave this place. Why don't you talk to me? What you're thinking, I will never know. Now's the time for you to let go. Let things that hold you tight scream at me for just one night. Why don't you talk to me? Why don't you talk to me? Come on and dig your heart instead of dirty looks. Why don't you talk to me? Stop. You got nowhere to go. No blame.
You're listening to the Bret Easton Ellis podcast, and I'm here at the Podcast One Studios in Beverly Hills with my guest Peaches. Dragging ourselves out of Avengers Age of Ultron, my millennial boyfriend, who rarely watches movies anymore, much less actually goes to a theater to see a film, his entertainment interests lying elsewhere. The idea of film culture no longer representing something that was at the center for him anymore, and that had been regulated off to the sidelines. He turned to me and muttered after being battered and bored by the Avengers sequel, "It's over. That's it for me. I don't ever want to have to sit through something like that again. I've seen that movie 100 times by now, and I can't do it anymore. That was 2.5 hours of hell. dull. Well, I somewhat agreed. The movie was never terrible, but it was monotonous in terms of how it felt. It had to somehow hit a series of the same notes that we usually have to sit through in movies like this. It just seemed so bloated and so repetitious, so overscaled. The Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow, and Mark Ruffalo, the Hulk relationship, non-relationship storyline added the film's only almost lyrical moments. And it seemed like it could have gone someplace emotionally, but we never feel it. And Joss Whedon, so widely praised for his feminist instincts, had somehow tripped up here. There was a squabbling backlash about Black Widow's origin story in social media involving sterility, and which some say so wounded Whedon he deleted his Twitter account, which proves that you just can't please everyone, and Joss shouldn't care. The movie was nowhere near as the first Avengers, and Janet's moment felt somewhat fresh, almost a tourist. And this one felt like a slog. I agreed with the 28-year-old. I'm putting a moratorium on superhero movies. So when I was reminded about a week later that I had been invited to the Los Angeles premiere of George Miller's Mad Max Fury Road, I expected him to say, forget it. But I was surprised when he said he thought we should go. Why not? It's a premiere. It'll be fun. And he seemed disappointed when I said I really wasn't interested before I ultimately confirmed our attendance. But of course, he forgot that premieres are not fun. They are work, and you are a captive audience, usually waiting 35 to 40 minutes after the announced starting time in a seat you didn't choose, surrounded by people you may know and have done business with and can't stand, and expected to be well-behaved and part of the cheering team for a film you might not even like. And playing the corporate card can be a stifling experience. You're supposed to be rooting for the studio, for all the players, making upbeat small talk at the after party. Well, you can either enjoy that or find it constricting. The boyfriend had to be briefed about the Mad Max myth since he was born the year after the last sequel, the PG-13 Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, the least of the films, which was released 30 years ago in 1985. And I couldn't believe it had been 35 years since I had seen The Road at a matinee the weekend it opened. The Road Warrior was in 1982 unlike anything we had seen before. The exploitation film redreamt by an artist is how the critic Pauline Kael put it. She thought it was at times an amazing piece of filmmaking, but she wanted to stress that it didn't mean anything to her compared to the way it meant something to her male counterparts. She thought it was joyless and shallow and not the great film many of her male counterparts were hailing it at the time. She believed the movie could be about something more than just a brilliantly executed car chase. She loved car chases, but she wanted something more that the men she knew just didn't care about. And she found something forbidding about the film and the way the audience and critics went gaga for it. There was a warning here for her. And that was the Road Warrior represented to her the ultimate male infantilization of movie culture that began for her with Star Wars, leading through Raiders of the Lost Ark and into the Road Warrior. That what was going to happen was that there was going to be a certain kind of pop movie pervasive in the culture. And that was one about boys or grown men as boys in adventure stories about themselves made by male directors for adolescent boys all over the world. What she located in her review of Raiders of the Lost Ark is that she hoped George Lucas and Steven Spielberg would get over, mature beyond the junk and crap of their childhoods. Was she alarmist? Was she prophetic? Did this actually end up happening? Alejandro Inarritu, the winner of Best Picture, Best Screenplay, and Best Director for Birdman at the Oscars this year, has said, I think there's nothing wrong with being fixated on superheroes when you are 7 years old, but I think there is a disease in not growing up. This Mad Max is back to its R-rated origins, and it is in many respects the film of 2015 so far. By the time the last chase reaches its kinetic climax, you feel an almost physical force radiating in your body. You've given in. The sensation is borderline overwhelming, and I haven't felt that in an American movie all year. The movie is an amazing achievement on one level, and on another, it left me vaguely depressed, grim, almost exhausting, a 2-hour car chase hurtling into meaninglessness, the low-level monotony of the conception masked by a visual bravura that is undeniable. The fearless 70-year-old George Miller leaves just about every Marvel filmmaker in the dust, but most importantly, refusing to work with CGI, though there are massive sandfire cyclones that are CGI. But the movie looks impressively analog, which adds to its power and to the spectacle because it's tactile in a way that it isn't in Age of Ultron, a movie like all other superhero movies that seems made in a lab and knows how to edit a scene so that at every moment we are aware of what is going on in the furious action set pieces, no matter how fast the editing is. And it's about 22.5 cuts per minute here in Fury Road. Pulling away from the action giving us beautifully framed master shots of giant widescreen vistas, letting us see exactly where every character is located in the action. Spatially, we are always aware of what is happening, and that is not always the case with the way most action movies are edited now. For instance, the somewhat disappointing Furious 7 looked like it was edited by a blender. The storytelling in Mad Max Fury Road is sleek and minimalist, no tortured backstories. It remains constantly in the present. The avalanche of story and information and problem solving that has become unbearable in Hollywood movies is nowhere to be found here. And that's a rush, too. The visual grandeur and the modest scale of Mad Max Fury Road is something old school. And I think that's why people are responding to it in rapturous ways. The reviews are off the charts great. But it is a 35-year-old brand. And for some of us, it may still seem like a retread, even if the film works. It ends up being both stirring and somewhat dispiriting. The big talk that has somewhat dominated the conversation about the movie, both pro and con, is how it works as a feminist act about female resilience. And Max is really the supporting player in this movie, embodied beautifully by Tom Hardy, though, sorry, not as beautifully as the young Mel Gibson. And that Charlize Theron's Furiosa is the central character, a heroine who is saving 5 female sex slaves from a tyrannical cult leader, his 5 wives, who he breeds with. And this is the movie's engine. The inclusion of this feminist revenge fantasy in this female-friendly Mad Max is amusing to some. It's both defiantly calculated because of today's market, and the movie is often amused by itself here with the interaction between the 5 wives. And yet Miller and Charlize Theron infuse it with a reason to exist beyond only placating PC feminists. And yet, while certain people were joyful about it, there were also feminists who found it curious and pandering. George Miller had even brought in the vagina monologues writer Eve Ensler as a consultant. Most amusingly, men's rights groups, yes, they exist, and in some ways I understand why they are flourishing this PC to a fault corporate culture, were loudly boycotting the movie. The main complaint being that the movie betrays its roots and forces feminism down the audience's throat, with the author Aaron Clary writing that this is the Trojan horse feminists and the Hollywood left will use to vainly insist on the trope that women are equal to men in physique, strength, and logic, blurring the lines between masculinity and femininity, further ruining women for men and men for women. If Fury Road is a blockbuster, then we may never see another action movie that doesn't lecture us about feminism, social justice warriors, and socialism, and who wants that? Well, it is only a movie, and one wonders if this argument would have been completely dismissed by the mainstream press if perhaps Charlize Theron was given a foil, a villainous female to battle with, because all of the women in Mad Max Fury Road are to one degree or another victims and cast-offs, and the fact that there are no female villains is something also worth pondering. Despite the so-called feminist trappings, it is also sentimental and old-fashioned in its portrayal of women as well, as most, or if not all, studio franchise movies are to one degree or another about everybody, regardless of gender. It still seems to be a kind of a demand within the sexism of Hollywood that it still can't seem to move beyond. The final note to all of this, my boyfriend loved Mad Max Fury Road. It restored his faith in going to the movies. Why has Hollywood, who is so proud of its own liberal humanism, been so slow in dragging its ass toward a kind of gender equality on screen and off? And why has the music business not been? Well, a singer, a musician, has more freedom in controlling her image and how she wants to come off than an actress working within the corporate world of Hollywood. Whether you're Annie Clark of St. Vincent or Miranda Lambert or Taylor Swift or the women of hhhhh or Zelia Banks or Lady Gaga or Jenny Lewis or Lana Del Rey or Sia or Sharon Van Etten or my guest today, Peaches, you can present or embody whatever you want creatively. The gender role is not as fixed as it is in being an actress and working in a collaborative business that is more often dependent on a man asserting himself and being in control of the product. These women say what they want. They're allowed to say what they want. True, a movie costs a lot more to make and market than a record, and more often than not has to usually conform to a kind of middle-of-the-road blandness and ideology that helps them make money, or so the fear of the unknown dictates. Should we be taking that risk, making that gamble? Will it pay off? A woman performer can also use her sexuality to relay her emotions, angry and defiant, even alienating listeners, and still command an audience. Not even Meryl Streep is allowed that in American film. It's hard to believe that Peaches, born Meryl Beth Nisker, has been on our radar since 2000 when Fuck the Pain Away with its lo-fi bass and snare drum and Peaches singing Sucking on My Titties Like You Wanted Me, Calling Me All the Time Like Blondie appeared. And we were a long way past Alanis Morissette, shocking radio listeners with the lyric, Did She Go Down on You in a Theater? And so begins a career in sexually aggressive, lo-fi, sex-positive, absurdist, electro-synth-pop, rap, guitar rock, a reaction to what was going on in pop at the moment, moving away from the clean, overproduced sound that was dominating. As a man in my late 30s, when I first heard and saw Peaches, I flashed on Wendy Williams from the Plasmatics and Nina Hagen. Let me tell you something Peaches sings on I Don't give a fuck. I don't give a shit. This was something new. This was something distracting, an erasure of second wave feminism morphing into a kind of fifth wave feminism, defiant, sexual, and completely unapologetic. Born in Canada in 1968, Peaches grew up on the outskirts of Toronto, the product of a father who was an accountant and a mother who studied psychology. And though her family was culturally Jewish, they were not religious. She was a self-proclaimed Jewish princess who attended a private Jewish school where half the classes were taught in Hebrew. And she lived around the corner from the band Rush, where she often played with Geddy Lee's brother while the band was practicing in the garage. She graduated from York University in Toronto, and graduating from college is pretty much a rarity for a pop star. And then she was a music drama teacher for young children for many years, until after a while, Peaches emerged, a moniker taken from the Nina Simone song For Women. She has made 3 records since the Teaches of Peaches, each one better than the last: Fatherfucker, Impeach My Bush, and I Feel Cream, which I think is her best record. Carrying on her raw, dirty, fearless feminism, she was a roommate with Feist as well as Elastica and MIA, who documented Peaches' first U.S. tour. She signed with Sony. She was dropped by Sony. Her music has been licensed countless times to everything from Lost in Translation to Mean Girls to South Park to Jackass to True Blood, as well as playing on Prada runways. She has performed a one-woman concert of the Andrew Lloyd Webber Tim Rice musical Jesus Christ Superstar. There's a movie of Peaches Does Herself, an original electro rock opera. She's also performed the lead role in an Italian opera. She directed a hybrid DJ MC show called Peaches DJ Extravaganza. The I Feel Cream tour turned into an 18-month world tour. Everyone, it seems, is a fan. Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears have asked to become collaborators. Madonna is a fan. Deborah Harry, Yoko Ono, Bat for Lashes. She influenced Tom York and Radiohead as well as MIA. She was an inspiration to Pink, Bjork, and Karl Lagerfeld and John Waters are admirers. Peaches has toured with Queens of the Stone Age and Marilyn Manson and recorded with Joan Jett and Iggy Pop. She's been invited to lecture at the Contemporary Music Academy in Berlin, and most importantly, she's a kind of vanguard figure for free speech and anti-censorship, as well as questioning standards of authority and power roles and the male gaze, as well as the idea of gender identity and the traditional notions of gender roles, blurring the distinction between traditional male and female roles and disrupting notions of ageism, embracing fringe sexuality, and ignoring the status quo and the corporate culture that is dominating society and dictating what is appropriate for the other denizens in corporate land. Peaches has an unrepentant rock and roll attitude that is the antithesis of the new rules of corporate culture. And she's always resisted what she's called and lamented the sanitized portrayal of women in popular music. She's also just published a book of photographs called What Else Is in the Teaches of Peaches that documents what began with a photographer documenting the I Feel Cream tour, but instead ended up being a vast 6-year project, and which we'll talk about later. But Peaches, I was being interviewed by a French director the other day, well, like I often am, who was making a documentary about porn culture and how it has influenced straight culture, meaning non-porn culture. And we were talking about how porn has influenced a generation of women who ape the attitudes and styles of porn, even to the ubiquity of making their own sex tapes, which is just so passé. And also younger girls who want to present a more brazen sexuality than previous generations of women. And we were talking about, was this influenced by the easy access and proliferation of porn? And we also talked about how a lot of women porn performers control their content, run porn companies, produce their own porn. And, we're kind of a long way from the 70s or 80s idea of porn being run by men only with mustaches and gold chains pimping out girls. The notion of sex positive is a rallying cry in porn among the women I know who perform in porn and blog about it. And, someone like Stoya, who blogs about the importance of what she and other women represent as free women, not controlled by men, but who do this because they like it. This admission of pleasure is a newish thing. And we also talked about how it has influenced certain women in the music business, performers. Madonna probably opening that door with her erotica tour in the 90s and her sex book and the videos for erotica and Deeper and Deeper. And we talked about how so many women performers today have sexualized their image in the music industry. Now, not everyone, but it is certainly a noticeable thing when you compare this to their male counterparts. Beyonce, Britney, J-Lo, Nicki Minaj, Lady Gaga. By comparing comparison, a lot of female performers use sex to sell a song, and men do not. And I know that's a macro comment in a way, but do you have any thoughts about that as to why? I mean, sure, there was David Bowie and Prince and even Billy Idol to a degree at one point back in the day.
Exactly.
But where's the Prince of today? And or am I looking at this from too much of a mainstream vantage point? Is it just corporate pop that favors superstars and bimbos?
I think that men use sex as much as women, but women embody it and men speak about it more. And I think that's sort of been the standard. So you'll have someone like Kanye West saying, like, my fist up her, like a civil rights sign, you know, which is very sexual and very powerful. And or you'll have Beyonce doing, you know, standing in at the Crazy Horse erotic club and doing the actual dance, you know. So I think, and also speaking more freely about sex. So you're seeing women speak more freely about sex, but you're not seeing men reveal an embodiment of sex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that's the difference.
Well, does it also make money? I mean, when you see the big acts, I mean, is it the lazy way to sell stuff? A song.
Is it a lazy way to sell a song by being sexualized?
Yeah.
Or is it a way of empowering a woman herself?
Yes, exactly.
This is a very good question. I mean, when I started Peaches, I really didn't see my work as being very sexual. I just thought I was saying what I wanted. And I've said this is nothing new that I've said, but just being very direct about things and giving my take on what I've heard in pop culture for years and how I didn't feel it included me in certain ways. So basically, pardon the pun, inserting myself into this, you know, kind of mode. And you see a lot of pop stars. Let's start with like even like you'll take Avril Lavigne or you'll take Britney Spears or you'll take Christina Aguilera or Pink or Beyonce. And when they get to their late 20s, they're like, you know, I'm sexual and I want to show everybody. But I think with them it comes from having to be in that box of like, I must be good, I must be this. So there's that repression thing, you know, and that that unlearning and those desires.
Well, sometimes, you know, I mean, I remember the huge avalanche of backlash that hit Liz Phair when she went sexual. After her first 2 or 3 records, she decided to reinvent herself and play to her sexuality. And she was universally attacked by the music press for doing that, where I thought that was a super conservative backlash, that it was masked as a betrayal of her indie roots in a way that she made a big pop record and she wore, you know, she was spreading her legs on the cover or whatever.
Well, I always found her really sexual.
Oh,
she had
completely.
that, you know, like Fucking Run.
Great
like,
song.
You know?
Yeah.
So, you know, this, I guess she was just trying it out. You know, she'd already been the indie darling. She'd already, you know, said fuck you to Exile on Main Street and made her own, or maybe said, I love this, I want to make my own version of it. And I guess she was just trying it out, playing. And you actually mentioned that I was on Sony Records. I was only Sony, yeah, just for like a single.
Right.
And I had that experience because, you know, it was during the Teachers of Peaches. I was on a very indie label, and then this indie label who basically sold me out to Sony, and I didn't really know what was going on either. And I was like, great, we can also sell the album, but they buried the album, and we made a single for Set It Off. And of course, my version of Set It Off wasn't good enough for radio or whatever. So they had a remix of it, and then we made a video. And just relating to the Liz Phair pop part, I decided they had me pick a video director, and I picked a very straight, you know, mainstream director in Germany, which is even more mainstream and straight, just so I could fuck it up. You know, and I said, I'm going to make a video where I just grow all my hair. I'm going to start with my eyelashes and my hair, and you're going to see me get prettier, and then it's going to like grow out of my, you know, everywhere else. And it was such a struggle to that's all I wanted to do. I wanted it in a white, and they're like, no, we're gonna do it in a club, and we're gonna do it with like club kids, and they're like, bring your friends. So I brought all my friends, and they're all like real partiers and started drinking and doing other things during the shoot. And then they brought some models in, and it was just this whole struggle. And then the video looks quite clean as I wanted it, but I wanted to add my dirtiness. But in the end, I don't know if it really worked. So I think maybe Liz Phair in that way too. Maybe she didn't want hair or controversy, but you want to try, and you see yourself still as yourself.
Yeah.
And you think that that's going to come through, even if you're trying to embrace a pop or trying to have some irony on it.
Right. Well, you famously said about Britney Spears, who through her management asked you, I think, to write songs for her, and you didn't want to because Britney kind of didn't reach out herself. And you were talking about the softcore porn images in Britney's "I'm a Slave for You" video.
Yeah.
And you've said that if you're going to give images like that, you better have the lyrics to back it up. I get it directly, but for some reason, it's more acceptable to do it visually, but not lyrically. And isn't that the opposite of music? And I'm interested in what were you getting at here? And did you really want to write a song for anyway, ever? Or was that ever going to work for you?
It's after that Britney got more and more sexual in her lyrics anyway. So I mean, it wouldn't have been such a stretch to write something. And I have different attitudes about that. If I can write it, I'll write it. It could be fun. It's something different for me, as long as I feel good about it. But yeah, no, at that point I found it was still like not her decisions, as opposed to someone like Miley Cyrus, the pop,
right.
which is another more current example of somebody who was, Hannah Montana, and now is just like, fuck everybody, I'm doing whatever I want.
Right.
So yeah, I just wanted the lyrics to back up the images. If you're really going to show this, is this what you really mean?
Right.
Do you really want to be gangbanged in your video by a bunch of dancers? They probably don't want to gangbang you. They want to gangbang each other anyway.
Well, look, we talked a lot about Miley Cyrus on this podcast, especially when the Wrecking Ball video was coming out, and we were all very pro Miley, and we like the idea that it is a refreshing fuck you attitude from a young female performer.
That particular video I have problems with just because of the certain director.
Terry Richardson.
Yeah, I have problems with Terry Richardson.
Yeah,
a lot of problems. But so I was disappointed that she used him as a director, and disappointed that Sia has used him for her wedding photos. But that's my own problem. I love Sia dearly, and I'm actually really proud of what Miley's doing right now with her, helping homeless children who are kicked out of their house for being trans or gay. So
I just didn't really like the Wrecking Ball video because it was kind of boring and it just wasn't that imaginative. And I like the song. The song's a hit, wow, you look at it. But I don't even think of it. We were talking about that video last year or whenever it was out. We were also talking about the Blurred Lines video.
Yeah, well, that's what the amazing thing.
The woman directed it.
The Blurred Lines.
Yeah, came up with the concept.
Yeah, well, I don't even think the video is quite boring too, right? I'm not.
Yeah, but the song is kind of so infectious in a way.
I can't deal with it. I cannot deal with that song, and that's where I started to really like Miley. I don't even think she even meant to give a political statement on the Blurred Lines, but she steamrolled it and was like, listen, buddy, like, you're not going to blur my lines,
One final thing about young female performers, and I've never really heard you talk about this, but for me, it's just hard not to see Lady Gaga as someone who appropriated what you were doing, and I guess making it more accessible in a way, more kind of quote unquote stylish or upscale. Do you see your influence in her? And I can't imagine you opened that door. What would she have been like? Did you ever sense that while watching when she first came on the scene?
I'm not being diplomatic, and I'll get to a more direct response to Lady Gaga, but she has appropriated everything from the last 30 years that has been incredibly influential stylistically or even lyrically. So to be included in that in a way is there's something to be said for that. To be there with Grace Jones, or who I think, to me, that Grace Jones and Madonna, those are the number one Lady Gaga influences. I'm more I guess the next generation influence. Directly speaking, I when she first played in Berlin, I said, hey, I'd like to meet her, and they said, oh, she's leaving right away. And of course there was a party. They were scared of me meeting her, or I don't know what they thought I would do. I just wanted to meet the real person, find out who that was. That's all. But one thing about Lady Gaga that I really like, I feel like she is more like an old school Bette. She should, like, before this Tony Bennett duet album came out, I'm like, she's like a Bette Midler and a Barbara Streisand and Eliza Minnelli, but she's young,
right?
And she should embrace that. And then she did the Tony Bennett duet album,
and sang The Sound of Music on the Oscars.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of amazing in a way. I mean,
I think that's her roots, and I think that this was, well, how can I make it bigger? And she accomplished everything. But I think that the Liza Minnelli route is really going to work for her.
Well, it's so funny because I always thought that her roots in the first couple of records were really in rock, that she wrote rock songs in a way, like more just like a rock song. It's really not a dance song so much. Bad Romance is a rock song, it seems like. And that I always thought she was going to morph more into that. But no, she has been going this other route.
Your skin so smooth, is this you dance?
On this podcast, I've had Carrie Brownstein from Slater Keeney on, as well as, which means refreshingly that feminists have many different voices.
Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing. Who gets? I know. Brownstein seemed to be arguing for kind of gender neutrality, and McGowan, who had been brutalized and was giving examples of this on the podcast by the sexism in Hollywood, still seemed to embrace her femininity, however that expresses itself. She wants to be a woman, and she wants to be a free sexual being, but also, of course, wants equal pay, and has fought very hard for that. She's been an activist for the equal pay movement. But she stresses that she's a woman first and acknowledges the differences between the female identity and the male identity, embraces them, in fact, but argues that we have to, again, get to that point where everyone is treated equally economically. Brownstein wanted the gender identity blurred even more. Now, one is a lesbian, one is heterosexual, and that might be where these differences emerge, and I don't want you to start rolling your eyes at that. But you have referred to something called the feminist.
What was that?
Trap, which for you the problem is about separatism and gender rejection. So there is this notion in the crazy men's rights groups attitude about, well, women desire men, men desire women because of fundamental biological roles that as a species are just not going to go away. And do you think by blurring the line of, say, attractive masculinity or attractive femininity is in a way a reductive or meaningless thing to do? I mean, this notion that we are tied to our gender, that we are a prisoner of sex, is just kind of a biological fact for most of us. I mean, do you think women really want a kind of gender neutral boy man who asks a woman, will you please give me permission now to touch your vagina? I mean, how do we find a balance between acceptance of our differences and gaining equality?
I guess I don't see it as neutrality. I see it as bring it all on. And I see that everybody has their level of gender masculinity or femininity or combinations of it. And we just have to find the the chemical, smell of the other person that has those combinations that bring you together. You're talking about one person who's heterosexual and one person who's lesbian, and now you're talking to a bisexual.
Yes.
Which gets really confusing and exciting.
Well, you have identified as bisexual for a long time, but there are differences between a man and a woman, right? When you're making love with them, when you're having sex. I mean,
I do like dick.
Mhm.
Dick, I do like pussy too. So I don't know what to tell you.
But you have said that you believe that everyone is inherently bisexual anyway, and
Yes.
you think that most men fall into the straight line too fast.
It's really and it still is true, even though I say it. And men and their relationship to their behind is very interesting. Straight men and their behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're so quick to go to your behind, but they won't let you near. There so many straight men who are like, oh, you're near my behind. I am amazed. I am amazed at that. That for them, I wrote a song about it like 15 years ago, Better for Boys.
Right.
And it's like still, straight men still have this stigma, even though they want to go there on a straight woman.
Right. Well, I don't know. I think that might be changing a little bit in the culture.
It is changing, but I'm telling you from experience, it still happens, and I'm still amazed.
You've also said that you think that maybe part of the reason is that you said, I think women have had their sexual revolution, but I don't think men really ever did, that they never got it.
It's true, actually. That's a good point I made.
But I agree. I agree with you. I think that is true. But I thought in the late 70s and early 80s, there was this new gay consciousness that was expressing itself in the mainstream and being, if not embraced by straight men, then they were at least, it seemed, willing to flirt with it a bit, maybe try it on a bit. Maybe it was a little disco, a little new wave.
Maybe it was the cocaine.
Maybe it was the cocaine. That can always help land a straight guy to bed if you want to do it. I definitely fooled around with guys who were straight during that time, who just found the whole idea of the sensibility intriguing and kind of trendy at the time, but did not mean that they were gay. But then what I think happened is that AIDS hit. And I think that door slammed pretty hard on the notion of a utopia of kind of, hey, maybe we're all bi, maybe we'll all get it on the, in the dorm room.
You can still do that. You just have to be careful.
Yeah. But it's just so strange that that's where it went. The kind of the post Bowie Iggy Pop thing that kind of just like didn't happen.
Even in if you look at the 80s and all the mainstream pop male stars had to look more feminine, and they had to grow their hair, they had all this makeup, and it was so amazing to see.
Watching when Bruce Springsteen was first doing the videos for Born in the USA, and he did that Brian De Palma video, Dancing in the Dark, where he had his really super tight jeans on, and his shirt was tucked in, and his hair was all kind of it was like, I mean, I like the song, but it was like, I did not expect Springsteen, or even someone like Don Henley.
That was the mainstream. That was incredible.
And so everyone was trying to look good because of MTV. Another thing that Rose was concerned about and what she was pissed off about was that she had been an LGBT activist, and she had also been an activist for the Equal Pay Amendment for women. And she said that she was shocked that after all of the years she spent helping the gay male community in terms of equal rights and marching with them and protesting with them, and when she asked for help with her equal pay for women activism from the male gay community, no one showed up. And she said she really noticed gay misogyny, not for the first time, but it began to become much more noticeable and forbidding in a way for her. And as she was talking about this, I told her I agreed. I mean, I have gay friends, and I'm shocked sometimes at the conversations about women, and especially drag shows at times, all the talk about fish this, fish that, and how drag can be looked at as kind of a grotesque exaggeration of femininity. But I agreed with her about this, and I said the gay men don't really want to talk about this because they don't want to look at themselves critically, not in this moment. There is a kind of corporate gay that the mainstream likes to sell, and they don't want it tarnished right now. So everyone kind of in the mainstream becomes a kind of bland gay robot. But, I thought Rose was kind of right. And when I spoke sympathetically to her and I said, as a gay man, she bristled and said, okay, but you're a man first. And not only is there horrible misogyny in the straight world, again, using countless examples of Hollywood misogyny, but she argued there was also misogyny in male gay culture, and that has to be called out. She came to expect it in Hollywood, but she didn't expect to be confronted by it in gay culture. And so she said that she was kind of hurt that she gave all this time to a cause she believed in, gay rights, and that when her cause came up, no one was there. And she said dismissively, that what did it all mean in the end? That I gave you all my time so you could stand on a float somewhere in an orange Speedo on Molly. Now, this is a podcast and not a commencement speech, but the gay community was outraged by that remark, though many feminists agreed with her, and there were a lot of women who identified with the supposedly taboo topic. And so my fellow gay brothers, as usual, demanded, yes, our favorite pastime in American culture, the apology. Make the apology. You must apologize to us because our feelings were so hurt. So Rose gave it, but did not back down from that initial assertion. And that many women came out and agreed with it. Do you have any feelings about this either way? Do you feel that the flaws in a minority community should be kind of swept aside just because they are a minority community?
No, I think there's so many things to discuss in every minority and every majority, like there are in every majority. I also think that there's like different kinds of feminism, different gay male cultures, and I think specifically, I don't know Rose's friends. I don't know who she was talking about, but I feel like I have an incredible gay community of feminists that would back me up.
Right.
And I hope that she finds them.
Well, she wasn't really talking about women. She was talking about
I'm talking about men.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about my gay men who would stand behind me as feminists and would stand up for that. I don't know if she's talking about Hollywood gay.
I think probably.
Do you know what? I don't really go past Hollywood. I stay in the East.
Mm-hmm.
And in Berlin, I think that it's true. They love to, be on Molly and stand in their bikini. And many times I'm at a gay male party and it turns midnight and it's dick o'clock where the goggles go on and then it's like I disappear. I see that and that hurts. I understand you've invited me to this party and then I disappear. But I know a great community of gay men who would support me in that.
Well, she said they're a great community, and they're all, none of them are not friends anymore, but it was just sort of this notion that it was men first, just like that party where, okay, we're going to screw each other now. Bye. Kate Blanchett this last week while promoting the Todd Haynes movie Carol at the Cannes Film Festival, and Blanchett is married to a man and has 3 kids, gave an interview to Variety where she intimated that she had a string of relationships with a series of women throughout her life, that she had quote unquote.
Why wasn't I one of them? Damn it.
But she had, well, I'll tell you that she had quote unquote many relationships with people of her own sex. And this made news and was briefly, if loudly, championed on social media. How cool, Kate's bi. However, Blanchett retracted the statement and released a press statement saying that she meant only that they were relationships, only that, none of them were sexual. However, the journalist who conducted the interview tweeted that when he asked Blanchett if she had any lesbian experience, she had said, quote unquote, many, many times. Kate Blanchett also says that sexuality is a private affair. And what happens these days, and I'm quoting her from her press release, is that if you're a homosexual, you have to talk about it constantly, it seems. It has to be the only thing you put before your work and any other aspect of your personality, and implying that this shouldn't have to be where we are. And then she added quite ominously, we are living in deeply conservative times. If you think otherwise, you're very, very foolish. And I don't know why she backtracked. I mean, she's promoting a movie where she plays a housewife who's in an affair with a younger woman. So maybe this was some kind of PR thing she was fooling around with. But everyone talking about it in social media was really psyched by this ultimately untrue admission. And yet I thought, would they have been as psyched if Eddie Redmayne or Rob Pattinson or Miles Teller or Bradley Cooper or Michael Keaton or Zac Efron had admitted the same thing? And you just have to come to the conclusion, I don't think so. I mean, there still seems to be a kind of double standard about lesbian sex versus man-on-man sex in mainstream culture. And I think the social media reaction would have been vastly different if a man had said that, and probably harmful to his career to a degree, even in our more enlightened age. And I think it would have been still possible.
I don't know, evolution, and because it still is a patriarchal society, and that still is the, you know, the upholding. So if a woman says she's with a woman, that's okay, because, you know, that's not the pinnacle which needs to be crushed.
It's interesting that there was such a rallying cry. There was no negative press at all about Kate saying that, none. And then there was kind of a backlash that when she kind of took it back.
I'm still confused. So she didn't, or she had relationships, friends that were women, and then she also had lesbian experiences were with different. I'm very confused.
She said in an interview when the interviewer asked her, "Have you ever had a relationship with women?" And she said many, many times, kind of implying that they were
Sexual.
sexual. And then when that came out, then she had to back